Good day. I am Tarvindran, son of Kalaselvan from class DKM 3D, and my matrix number is 01 DKM 19F1177. My lecturer's name is Mr. Kairol Asnam. Now I am going to present about my case study from Engineering Society course. Let's get started. Case study 1, Professional Ethics. Question: Engineer A is employed by a company which works on defense projects. He assigned duties related to the work of subcontractors, including review of the adequacy and acceptability of the plans for material provided by some subcontractors. He found problems with certain subcontractor submissions and proposed that one of them be redesigned because it represents excessive costs and time delays. After continued disagreement between Engineer A and management placed a critical memorandum in his personal file and placed him on 3 months probation, with the further notation that if his job performance did not improve, he would be terminated. Does Engineer A have an ethical obligation or ethical right to continue his effort to secure change in the policy of his employer under this circumstance, or to report his concerns to proper authority? Summarize the discussion and conclusion for this case study. Before we start our discussion, let's have an introduction about this question. Introduction: Engineer A is working at a large industrial companies involved in large-scale jobs in defense projects. The duties of Engineer A are given in connection with the work of subcontractors, including reviewing the adequacy and acceptance of plans for material provided by subcontractors. While carrying out this work, Engineer A advised his superior officer by making a memorandum on the problems he encountered with certain submissions from one of the subcontractors, and arguing management to reject the job and asking the subcontractor to rectify the shortcomings he outlined. Management rejects Engineer A's comments, especially his suggestion that certain subcontractor work be redesigned due to Engineer A's claim that subcontractor submissions represent excessive costs and time delays. After further exchange of memorandums between Engineer A and his management and ongoing disputes between Engineer A and management on the issue he raised, management placed a critical memorandum in its personal file, then placed it on trial for 3 months with further notation that if his work performance does not improve, he will be laid off. Engineer A further asserted that his employer was obligated to ensure that the subcontractor delivered the equipment in accordance that the specifications as he interpreted that same, that saving considerable defense costs. He has requested an ethical review that determination of the appropriateness of his actions and the level of society responsibility of the engineer in such a situation. Discussion: A sense of moral responsibility and forward-looking is a sense in which a person is responsible for achieving good results in some things. The idea is that one is entrusted to achieve or maintain this result, and it is hoped that both of them have relevant knowledge and skills as well as make a careful effort. However, despite the best efforts, the result may be not achievable. For example, a responsible doctor patient can die, and the work of a responsible engineer can result in an accident because the accident is unpredictable, impossible to compensate for the cause of the accident, or because others don't want to be heed the engineer's warning. A sense of moral responsibility and backwardness is that where a person or group deserves an ethical assessment for an action or outcome. One who is quick to receive moral praise for a good outcome or a bad blame. A sense of moral responsibility can be confused with a sense of cause and effect responsibility for some exceeding or past circumstance. Although when a moral agent is responsible for a result, that is the reason to think that the agent is morally responsible for it. However, casual responsibility is not definitive proof of moral responsibility. If one's action bring bad result only because of bad luck in the form of an accident, then one is not morally responsible for the result. Future responsibility is often determined in terms of the outcome to be achieved rather than an action to be taken. Consideration is required to know the what action will be achieved than the action to be taken. Such practical wisdom in the required to fulfill the many obligations that were often determined in terms of actions to be taken or to be avoided. For example, contrast the responsibility of engineer for the safety of the public with the obligation of citizen to testify the witnessing a crime. Note the obligation will never be used in a responsible way is referring to the welfare. That that is, you will not say that a person is obligated although you may say that he is responsible. Conclusion. As a conclusion, Engineer A does not have an ethical obligation to continue his effort to secure a change in the policy of his employer under the circumstance, or to report his concerns to proper authority, but he has an ethical right to do so as a matter of personal conscience. And finally, these are the reference for the case study 1. Case study 2, Professional Ethics. Question. Refusing to sign, seal construction documents. Engineer Sarina left firm A, at which she was an employee, to work for a competitor firm B, a project on which she is in charge while at firm A was virtually completed before she left, but she did not sign or seal the construction documents before leaving. Tan, a principal in the first frame, requests Sarina to sign and seal the drawing. Can Sarina refuse to sign or seal the construction documents? Can Sarina ask frame A to pay her for signing the documents? What are Sarina's obligations with respect to the work she left behind? Before we start our discussion, let's have an introduction about question. Introduction. Sarina is an engineer who left firm A and goes to work for firm B, a competitor. A project on which Engineer Sarina was in responsible charge was virtually completed, but Engineer Sarina did not sign or seal the construction documents before leaving firm A's employment. Engineer Tan, a principal in firm A, requested Sarina to sign and seal the drawings. Engineer Sarina refused to sign or seal the construction documents unless firm A pays an additional fee for Engineer Sarina. Discussion. The duty of engineers to be responsible for professional service is the basic ethical principle contained in the NSPE Code of Ethics. In general, engineers as professionals have a responsibility to assume responsibility for the professional service performed by them or under the direct personal supervision. Depending on the nature of the work and other requirements, this may include work done for the benefit of the client, design, work, reports, plans, specification, and work completed by the engineer who will be submitted to be public authority for approval. Engineers who work for one firm and then move to another firm are not exempt from this professional responsibility. The work they did for their previous employer was no less for also because they no longer had a direct relationship with the company. Once a professional provides professional service on behalf of the client, the professional must ensure that the work is done in a responsible and professional manner and that the client's interests are protected and safeguarded. This situation can be very sensitive where an engineer leaves the company to work with a competitor company. This issue has been discussed by BER on many occasions. However, the fact that the two companies are in direct competition should be not assume the responsibility of the engineer to take responsibility for the job and take appropriate measures in the interest of the client. It seems that it is not just an ethical act but also an action that suits the interests of all parties, including the interests of the new firm employed by a company current engineer. It is not entirely clear that from the fact to what extent the work was completed by engineer Sarina. However, it can be assumed by a fact and the use of the term almost completed that the work was completed in almost all respects and only few ministerial details still have to be carried out. On other bases, it can be assumed that Engineer Tan will not be asked to conduct a complete or detailed review of the job, as it can be assumed that Engineer Sarina is already very familiar with the job on the project for which he has been and continues to be responsible. Moreover, it does not appear under the fact that because Engineer Serena was not employed by the original firm in the time he was asked to sign and close the photograph that he would violate the ethical claims contained in the NSPE Code of Ethics. Conclusion. As a conclusion, we are concerned with Engineer Sarina's professional attitude regarding the firm request for him to sign and close the photograph. While we believe Engineer Sarina may be entitled to a small fee for additional professional treatment for his former employer and as part of his responsibilities to his new company, we were shocked by Engineer Sarina's refusal to sign and close the photographs except to pay additional compensation. As we have discussed before, because Engineer Sarina is responsible for the job and has direct control and personal oversight of the job, Engineer Sarina has a professional obligation to sign the work regardless of how the compensation problem is resolved. It is unclear whether competition pressure between firms may be a factor in Engineer Sarina's position, but such a factor cannot occur in this type of problems by signing and close photos. Assuming we are in this case that Engineer Sarina is fully responsible for the job and has direct control and personal supervision over the job, Engineer Tan is clearly allowed to ask Engineer Sarina to sign and seal the document in question. And finally, these are the reference for case study 2. Case study 3. Professional ethics. Question. Comments by one engineer concerning another. Engineer allies practice in Ohio but requires the service of a structural engineer license in New York. Alice contact the secretary of the New York Society of Professional Engineers to ask for a recommendation. The secretary looks at the list of members engineers and suggests Anna. Largely on basis of this suggestion, Alice hires Anna. Alice is not satisfied with Anna's service. Among other things, she believes Anna does not communicate well. How should Alice handle the situation? Should Alice contact the secretary to inform him that he did not give a good recommendation? Should Alice contact the secretary without first saying something to Anna? Before we start our discussion, let's have an introduction about the question. Introduction. Engineer Alice practicing in Osio requires the service for a structural engineer in New York. Engineer Alice contacts secretary, who is the secretary of the New York Society of Professional Engineers, to request the name of an appropriate engineer in New York to perform the required structural engineering work. Secretary suggests Engineer Anna, who engineer Alice then decided to retain, not satisfied with the service provided by Engineer Anna, including Engineer Anna's lack of regular communication with Engineer Alice. Engineer Alice later contacts Secretary and tells Secretary of his generous dissatisfaction with Engineer Anna, but does not first communicate this displeasure to Engineer Anna. Engineer Alice also remarks to Secretary that he is interested in retaining the service of another structural engineering for the project. Soon thereafter, Engineer Anna contacts Engineer Alice and expresses his strong displeasure towards Engineer Alice for the comments he made to Secretary. Discussion. In general, the NSPE Code of Ethics places an obligation on all engineers to respect the reputation of all other engineers in their professional endeavors. Engineers should be honest and direct in their communication with their colleagues in all professional matters. Often, individual engineers have professional and business relationships with their professional counterparts that require the use of appropriate judgment and discretion. The Board of Ethics has not had the opportunity to deal with any type of case specifically explained in the facts or present in this matter. The issue of public criticism by another engineer, but his statement is very different in that case. As the board understood the facts, Engineer Alice need the service of structural engineer in another jurisdiction and sought the advice of a colleague in that jurisdiction, the secretary. This is entirely appropriate and certainly not contrary to the code. It seems that the only action that Engineer Alice can question is when faced with the unsatisfactory professional performance of the secretary. Engineer Alice pays attention to this fact to the secretary, while Engineer Alice communication that secretary may be appropriate method of providing feedback. Engineer Alice should also direct comments about Engineer Anna to Engineer Anna. If Engineer Alice has difficulty communicating with Engineer Anna, she probably explore other avenues of relationships. Perhaps frustrated by the inability to receive a response from Engineer Anna, Engineer Alice deliberately made her views known to the secretary to make a fuss on Engineer Anna. Next to other question, we do not believe that the secretary has involved in improper actions. First, based on the facts, we assume that Engineer Alice told Engineer Anna good faith and did not know any history from Engineer Anna on the act of fraud. Second, based on the facts, we do not believe the secretary disclosure to Engineer Anna about Engineer Alice's defection in a violation of engineers' belief in Anna. In fact, as we already know, there seems to be some indication that Engineer Alice means secretary to Engineer Alice unhappy known to Engineer Anna. While the facts do not provide enough details, we believe that Engineer Anna has a professional responsibility to communicate more directly with Engineer Alice about the status of project. However, we do not believe Engineer Anna's action violate the code of ethics. Finally, although it seems that Engineer Anna is advised to improve her practice, the fact of the case do not indicate the Engineer Anna is unethical. Conclusion. As a conclusion, a large number of employees come to work with the intention of doing a good job and are proud of what they do. This makes them interested in what the organization is doing and what is planned for the future. There is not much more frustrating for employees than finding out about the big new initiative, either through someone outside the organization or by watching the 6 o'clock news. I have both of these examples going on. That doesn't make leadership bad. It just means that they often need help figuring out how to communicate and put in place systems and processes to do a better job. Too often employees do not feel confident or involved in any decision making process. Sandy Edwards, Senior Vice President of AMA Enterprise, said in a media statement, especially when it comes to an organization's business strategy or plans of the future. And finally, these are the reference for the case study 3. That's all from me. Thank you.